What's causing that? Like, why don't we care enough about ourselves to care about ourselves, so to speak? Why, have you ever chanted rounds? I will do a demonstration now of what these rounds look like. I call them blah rounds. You know the word blah? You have that in French? Is there a French equivalent for blah?
Yeah.
Same word?
Blah, blah.
Yeah, just said with a different accent. Blah, blah, blah.
Say it twice.
Je suis blah.
When you say anything in French, it's longer than English.
For sure.
So this is how you chant blah japa. Hare blah, hare blah, blah blah hare hare, hare blah, blah blah hare hare, blah. Ever chanted japa like that? Yes or yes? Yes. You don't have to raise your hand because I know we've all chanted that way. So the question that would always come to my mind is, when we chant that way, why don't we do something? Like, why don't we care? Have you ever chanted and you realized this is blah japa and you just finished your rounds with more blah japa? You ever done that? And the whole time you're chanting, this little voice in your mind is saying, you know, this is not good. You should do something, but you're kind of like, I don't care. You know that little voice? You have that little voice in your head? The I don't care. You know you should do this, and that voice says, yeah, but it's too much trouble.
Yeah, too hard.
So we all have done this with japa. You can apply this to so many things that we should do that we don't do, and the little voice says something like, do it tomorrow, or it doesn't matter, or I don't care, or worse, this is when it gets really bad. I don't deserve. It's not that I don't care. I'm not even worth taking the time. It's like why should I take the time? I'm not worth it. So I had a realization while I was teaching the workshop, because I had combined. I taught a lot of japa and mixed it with self-care, because I realized that a lot of bad japa, the problem wasn't so much that the japa is bad, the problem was that we didn't care about chanting well. That was the problem. So I couldn't help devotees chant better if I didn't help them care about their chanting. Because I can tell you how to improve your japa, but if you don't care, what are you going to do? You're going to go, too much trouble. Blah, 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 blah. Chanting blah japa is easier than chanting good japa. At least it seems like, right? Because you don't have to try. So I started realizing that if we are going to improve anything, we have to care more about ourselves. Because if we don't care, where's the impetus going to come to improve? Now, this is really interesting, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur has described inattentive chanting having three elements, and one element is apathy. And of course, apathy means whatever. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Prabhu, you're falling asleep. Whatever. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna. Prabhu, you're not chanting all 16 words of the mantra. Whatever. Prabhu, you didn't get up in the morning. Whatever. You know that? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, apathy is one of the main ingredients of inattention. I just don't care. So instead of saying, I don't care about my japa, I was telling devotees, we should say, I don't care enough about myself to care about my japa. Instead of saying, I don't care about my sadhana, or whatever the blank is, I don't care enough about my marriage, my ashram, my health, my finances. Just go down the list problems that I haven't solved. You know, all those things, those resistances you have to dealing with something. All of that, when we say, I don't care about this, start to think, if that this is important, and if that this would, if you improve the this, if that would help you, then start thinking, I don't care enough about myself to care about this. Because in my mind, after teaching this workshop like 10 times, that was my conclusion. That if we have more self-care, then we're going to care about all these other things. So, at the end of the workshop, we do this amazing exercise. And I had no idea the results of this exercise. It was astonishing. We asked everyone after 6 hours or 12 hours or 8, I just did one in Slovenia, it was about 18 hours. We asked everyone, how would having more self-care improve your life? And everybody comes up with this long list of problems they have in their life that would be solved with more self-care. And I didn't expect this the first time we did this. And the first time we did it, it was online, so everything comes in the chat. And we have like, I don't know how many devotees, probably like 300 devotees or something. So that's a lot of 300 people, you know, and half of them go into the chat. So there's at least 150 people sharing, and they're just these lists of all these things that would improve in their life to add more self-care. I was like, oh my God, this is more powerful than I thought. So, the next thing that became a concern for me, because I do a lot of counseling, I studied a lot about 20 years ago about human nature, psychology, the mind, self-development, and all of a sudden, Krishna started sending me every devotee in ISKCON who had mental problems. Like as soon as I trained myself, everyone who had a problem was in my inbox. I think you're the right person to help me. And so when you do this kind of work where people are opening up, you start to see the inner world of ISKCON that we don't normally see. The counselors see it, the gurus can see it, some of them don't want to see it. But the inner world is a world that's a common world of guilt and of shame and of low self-esteem. Conflating humility and low self-esteem, just some kind of self-hatred going on, and also giving up on oneself. And then the worst one, the icing on the cake in the worst ways, I don't feel worthy of being Krishna conscious. I don't feel worthy of Krishna's love. I don't really care. So, I started studying this in Prabhupada's books, and you wouldn't believe how much there is. Nobody thinks this is there in Prabhupada's books. It's there. I wrote an article on self-compassion. Prabhupada doesn't use these words, self-compassion, right? He doesn't use the word self-compassion. But everything he teaches is for our benefit to take and apply to our benefit, isn't it? So at the end of the last workshop, I said to the devotees, how many verses in Bhagavad Gita do you think deal with self-care? Everybody said 700. How many in Bhagavatam? 18,000. It's like when you go through the process and you start to understand that everything we're being taught is for our ultimate liberation. It's not just to save others, we have to save ourselves first. So in one sense, everything that Prabhupada taught was for our benefit, to take care of ourselves, to become Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead. And how many times did Prabhupada tell us we should go back to Godhead? A lot. You should do this, and you'll go back to Godhead. So I wrote an article on self-compassion, and I think some leading devotee or someone said Prabhupada never said that. And you know what it's like online when somebody says something, it like leads in for all the others to like start ganging up on you. And they were saying, like, this is some kind of New Age psychobabble. And I wrote in one of my books, I wrote a chapter, and it was titled something like self-envy, self-hatred, things like that. And the devotee who was editing it was a Prabhupada disciple, and she said, "You can't call it this chapter because Prabhupada never said these things." I go, "Yes, he did. He said it a lot." And I want to explain it because it's kind of covered. You don't notice it until you notice it, then you see it everywhere. Like you start noticing the red Honda Civics that you never noticed, and now they're everywhere, something like that. So, as we know, there's this phrase that's used in Bhagavad Gita, he is envious of himself. And Prabhupada uses this word occasionally. If you don't take the Krishna consciousness, then you're envious of yourself. And so that's kind of puzzling, isn't it? Because envy is for something that someone else has that you don't have, so how can you be envious of yourself? Right? Prabhupada even says meat eaters are envious of cows. It's like I'm not really envious of a cow. I don't really want to be a cow. Or envious of an ant. Devotee's not even envious of an ant. Like, why would I be envious of an ant? One day we were on a morning walk and garbage was being collected, and I said to the devotees, "Are any of you envious of the garbage collectors?" And everybody said, "No." And then some guy drives up in a Mercedes. I go, "Are any of you envious of him?" And some people say, "Yeah." Some people say, "Yeah," because I don't have any money, and I'd like to have money, so I'm envious of him. So the word envy is the word in Sanskrit dvesha. Dvesha means hatred, and it also means, Prabhupada translates it also as hatred in other verses, and violence. That's why Prabhupada uses the word, we're envious of the cows, we're envious of the ants. Violence. So when Prabhupada talks about self-envy, he's talking about violence to our actions which are self-violent, actions with which we are hurting ourselves, and actions which demonstrate hatred towards ourselves, which is kind of the same thing. So, the concept of self-love came to me from these statements of Prabhupada, and I wanted to read some of them as kind of an opening for this workshop. My computer would only... The computer decided... Oh, okay. Well, let me read you something first. This is so interesting. This is so nice. This idea, what I realized, self-care internally comprises of self-compassion, self-acceptance, and self-love. So any of those words, it's like, well, where is that in Srimad Bhagavatam? There are actually a few places Prabhupada talks about loving yourself, directly using those words. But as I said, indirectly it's there. And then self-acceptance. So, Prabhu, if I accept myself, I'll just eat and sleep all day. That's the idea. So it's not exactly what it means. But let's look at these ideas. And first I want to start with the idea of self-compassion. And this is really funny. Well, funny in an interesting way. I'm going to read to you the mission statement of the devotee care, the devotee care, whatever, department. This is their mission statement. We strive to care for the spiritual, emotional, physical, and social well-being of the devotees of ISKCON. We want devotees to be encouraged, inspired, and empowered to be happy and make progress in Krishna consciousness, and thus be enthused to expand Prabhupada's mission. So it's just about well-being. Right? So I did something fun for all the devotees and people who said, this self-compassion stuff, it's like, nah, it's not really part of our world. Nice. Yeah, it's New Age, it's Buddhist. It's very Buddhist. Mahatma's become a Buddhist. So, I did a little math. Here's the devotee care the devotee care department statement. We should care for the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being of the devotees so they're happy and inspired, so they'll be inspired to spread Krishna consciousness. And I'd like, okay, let's do the math. Raise your hand if you're a devotee. I mean, don't be humble, just like, yeah, everyone raise your hand. You're a devotee, okay. Now, since you're a devotee, would it be bad to treat yourself this way? I don't think so. So I made up a devotee self-care mission statement, which is exactly the same as the devotee care mission statement, except it's about how we take care of ourselves. You want to hear it? Yeah. I think I had some fun. I strive to care for my spiritual, emotional, physical, and social well-being in order that I can be well-situated, inspired, and happy in Krishna consciousness and motivated to expand Srila Prabhupada's mission. It's the same statement, except we do it for ourselves. Interesting, isn't it? Okay, so we have some statements from Srila Prabhupada that I think you'll find interesting. Some of you know these statements, but now I think in the context, if we just think of the context of self-care, then maybe they might take on a new light, a little more power. So this is a room conversation. First of all, save yourself. Then try to save others. Or both things can go on simultaneously. The same example. If you want to save somebody who's drowning, you must know that I may not be washed away. I have to remain strong. Then I can save him. Srila Prabhupada, February 14th, 1977. So, very simple point. Don't try to save someone who's drowning if you don't know how to swim. So, it's a little mantra we have here. I'm going to say it, and then you can say it. A little affirmation. Can we do that?
Yes.
Yep. Are affirmations allowed in Canada? Do we need approval of the GBC? GBC's not here. Okay, we can do it.
Like that one.
But it's being recorded and he finds out. He'll like it. All right, so here's the affirmation. I will say it, then you say it. I save myself first.
I save myself first.
Okay, now turn to the person next to you and tell them, I save myself first.
I save
I say
So this is the whole foundation of self-care. And this is not selfish at all. It's selfish in a good way, because you can't save any drowning people if you don't save yourself, right? Another way of saying this is, I take care of myself first. So let's say that. I take care of myself first. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, I take care of myself. Now, I have to tell you something about affirmations. They actually work if you say them like you mean them. Right? So the idea of an affirmation is, I may not fully imbibe this, but I want to imbibe it, so I have to act like I've accepted this as truth and I've imbibed it now. So I'd like you to say it again, but say it like this is how you are all the time. Okay? I save myself first.
I save myself first.
That didn't sound like you mean it. Okay, say it like you mean it. I save myself first.
I save myself first.
Now turn to the person next to you and tell them, like you mean it, I save myself first.
I save myself first.
Say it, say it, say it.
So, have you ever been chanting your rounds? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then a thought comes in your mind. WhatsApp. That ever happened to you?
Always.
All the time.
Should I keep chanting, or should I to chant, or what's out? That is the question. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The more you chant, sometimes the more you think of WhatsApp, and then you think, well, I'm already thinking of WhatsApp, I might as well WhatsApp, because what's the point of chanting while I'm thinking of WhatsApp? Right? So now, the next time that happens, if you think, I save myself first, I take care of myself first, you will just drop the WhatsApp and keep chanting, unless there's some emergency. It'll just be very easy. This is what I do. When I chant, this is what I do. When I do sadhana, this is what I do. When I have to, and that, I don't really like to read, should I read? No, you'll do it more easily because you care. It's actually that simple. If you build up your self-care, so many things become easy. Now, do you know that one of the cures for addiction is self-care? Did you know that? If somebody has an addiction, one of the antidotes to addiction is self-care. And we know what addiction is. Addiction means you're powerless over something. If someone can learn self-care, they can protect themselves from addictions, or at least temptations. Isn't that amazing? It's that powerful. It can rectify. It can rectify many of our problems if we upgrade our self-care. So, we're going to read some more things that Prabhupada said, because I feel like if there's any doubt in anyone's mind that this is bona fide, you're not going to do it. But if we hear from Prabhupada enough, we'll see, no, this is what he wants. Are you ready for the next quote? Are you ready for the next quote? Are you enthusiastic? This is a famous letter. But as devotees of Krishna, being engaged in the practical work of spreading Krishna consciousness, that is already the highest realization. That's all right. That is our real mission, to deliver the world by preaching Krishna's message to others. But even a higher realization, the highest realization, guess what it is?
To save yourself.
Is to save yourself. Okay, so repeat after me. The highest realization is to save myself.
The highest realization is to save myself.
Turn to the person next to you and tell them.
The highest realization is to save myself.
I'm not making this up. Okay. So we're going to talk about two words. I mentioned this word self-envy. Prabhupada also uses the word spiritual suicide, and he also uses the word killer of the soul. Translates Isopanishad with the word killer of the soul. Translates Gita, envious of his own self. And self-envy comes up a lot. And spiritual suicide, he also talks about spiritual suicide. So we're going to read these quotes. So this is from Bhagavad Gita 16, chapter 16, verse 17. He does not know that the present life is a preparation for the next life. Not knowing this, he is actually envious of his own self as well as others. So there's a guest who read this, and he had, the question we all have. What does it mean to be envious of yourself? Like what, if you don't take the spiritual life, if you don't take advantage, how is it you're envious of yourself? And so Prabhupada says, if he's going to become a dog in his next life, and if he does not take precaution, then is he not envying himself? In other words, is he not committing violence to himself? Is he not acting ultimately out of self-hatred? So when Prabhupada uses the word spiritual suicide or self-envy, he's referring to the position of someone who has the opportunity to go back to Godhead in this life and decides by their actions to live in a way that that's not going to happen. So one time, in Los Angeles, some devotees had left the temple and they had told Prabhupada, and he ended up talking about it. I was there. He ended up talking about leaving Krishna consciousness in the class because a few people had left and it was disturbing the leaders, and they were discussing with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, if you come to Krishna consciousness, you're the most fortunate. And if after coming to Krishna consciousness you leave, you're the most unfortunate. You know, like the man who has nothing but had $1 million, he's more unfortunate than the man who has nothing, who never had anything. So you have this opportunity, you give it up, you're most unfortunate. So that's Prabhupada's definition of self-envy. You have an opportunity and you don't take advantage. It goes back to this, I don't care. This little voice in our head that says, I don't care, is our biggest enemy. And the voice, the purpose of any course on self-care is to change that voice from I don't care to I do care. Now, we've done a survey. We asked devotees on a list from I hate myself, I don't like myself, I don't care, I sometimes care, I do care, I accept myself, I love myself. Where are you on that? Most devotees were, sometimes I care, sometimes I don't. Like say 70, 80% are in that, and another 10% I don't like myself, and another 10% I love myself, I take care of myself. And most of us are, sometimes I care, sometimes I don't. So, if we, this is so interesting, if we come to this point of I care, then all those moments of should I do this, should I do that, they'll be gone. You'll always do the right thing because you care. Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
You'll always have, but that WhatsApp for the job, or do I really want to get up early this morning, or why do I want to regulate this, or go here, or do that, or stop this habit, or eat this at midnight, and all that. When the I care is strong enough, it's very easy just to say, no, I won't do that, or yes, I will do it if it's something I should do. I know that sounds kind of simple, but after teaching this for about 2 years, maybe 10 times, this is what I've seen in the lives of devotees. It just upgrade that I care from not sometimes I don't, sometimes I do, to I always do, and you'll see amazing things happen in your life. Restraint, and it becomes easy. Yeah. We do an exercise, maybe we'll do it later. We do an exercise where we talk about if we had self-love, how would that be different? And so we asked the devotees to fill in the blank. I love myself too much to do blank. We have 108 from the last workshop we did. I think we did a workshop for Chinese, and I think we got 108 out of that. 450 devotees. Online, got 108. And of those 108, I recorded 38. And now it's time for a word from our sponsor. The recordings of those are on the USB sticks I have with all my music. There are like 8 guided meditations, about 5 on self-care. Well, there's actually 48 guided meditations, but there's about 5 or 6 on self-care. And I recorded all of those. They're beautiful. I love myself too much to allow myself to, and all those things I don't want to do that I'm doing. And so it was a realization, if I just love myself a little more, I have more self-compassion, more self-care, I can therefore do what's best for me. And the list was mind-blowing. And the first one on the list, you want to hear the best one? That's the best one. You're going to love this, it's the best one.
It's huge.
Everybody loves it. It's fantastic. I love myself too much to allow myself to suffer. Wow. Wow. You want to say that after me? I love myself too much to allow myself to suffer. Turn to the person next to you and tell them.
I love myself too much to allow myself to suffer.
Have you ever done something, and you don't have to raise your hand because I know the answer is yes. Have you ever done something and you knew it wasn't good for you, and you knew there'd be some ramification down the end of the road, and you did it anyway? Yes or yes?
Yes or yes.
COC, wheel. How do you say or? We, non, oui. C'est vrai ou c'est vrai? Okay. Je ne parle pas français.
You parle espagnol.
And I speak more French than Spanish because I studied French in school. And Spanish is just, I have to listen to people speaking. So devotees were thinking of all those things they do that they wish they hadn't done and they regret, and why did I do that? And you know the things you regret having done and you do again? You ever done that one? You know? I will never eat potato chips at midnight again. And then we say never. So, but with more self-love, when you say that, you can say, I love myself too much to allow myself to do this. You can do that. And I don't want to challenge you, I want to recommend, but I could say challenge. I would like to challenge you while you're here at the retreat, because this is a good place to do more tapasya, and challenge yourself to something. Maybe it's japa in the morning, you're spacing out and going here and there and talking and going to sleep, or whatever. Just say, I love myself too much to not chant all my rounds in the morning here, something like that. That could be a challenge, or whatever it is. I love myself too much not to be here at 5 o'clock. Whatever you want to do, whatever difficult for you. See if that helps you, and start cultivating self-care. Start thinking about caring about yourself. Start thinking about turning that switch from sometimes I care or I don't care to I do care all the time. That becomes my new state of being, I care. And you will see it has an amazing effect on your ability to give up things you'd like to give up and do things you like to do. And a lot of what we have to give up is mental. It's just thoughts. It's just attachments, right? So we can give up things. I care about myself too much to be attached to this and that. Yeah, are you attached to anything that's not good for you?
Yes.
Yeah. Why? What's the answer? There really isn't a good answer, right? But I would go back to this answer. I'd say, why? Because I don't care enough about myself. That's why. That's the ultimate answer. That's the answer I would like to offer you for any challenge you have when you ask yourself, I know I should do this, why am I not doing it? Just tell yourself, because I don't care enough about myself. Not because I don't care enough about not eating this food, I don't care enough about my japa, I don't care enough about being a good spouse. No, I don't care enough about myself to do that. I'll give you an example. This is really beautiful. This came to me after, I'm sometimes a slow learner. I don't even realize what I'm teaching sometimes. So this came to me after doing 7 self-care workshops. That sometimes in married life, we run into this problem I'm doing everything and my spouse isn't doing anything. Or I'm doing 51%, she's only doing 49. We get into that. You ever get into that? Why am I the one doing 51%? And she's only doing 49. And it can create some kind of tension and it's not nice. And I was thinking, If I do whatever I have to do to make the relationship work, that's self-care, because then I'm in a good relationship. And then I can relish and enjoy and benefit from a good relationship. I don't benefit from a bad relationship, do I? I just waste time fighting and being miserable. So even if I'm making sacrifices, but I make sacrifices that help the relationship, it's actually self-care, because I benefit from a good relationship. Isn't that beautiful? That can really get you over the hump of, why do I have to do everything? Or, you know, it's not fair or whatever. It doesn't matter. When my spouse is happy, I'm happy. I've got, everything is good. So that's, if I make you happy, it's self-care, because now we're happy together. What do you think? Try it out, see if it works. It works. Another way it works, which is really interesting, is, you know, sometimes you see a devotee. You ever see a devotee and you're like, oh, it's him. And you're like, I hope he doesn't see me. That kind of devotee, right? You know that devotee? You've got one of those devotees in your life? So when we have that devotee in our life, what's actually happening is like it's making us uncomfortable. It's difficult. We're making it, the way we deal with that devotee makes it difficult on ourselves, right? So we end up suffering. Oh, it's so-and-so. He's always this and always that and always this and always that. I don't see him, I don't want to talk to him. Or he's such a liberal or such a fanatic, conservative. But all of that ultimately causes pain to ourselves. So with more self-care, I think I would like to see what's nice about the devotee, so when I see him, I don't have to run away from him, right? I can say, oh, great. What can I see about him that I can appreciate, because that makes it easier for me. So it causes me to appreciate him just for my own well-being. What do you think of that? You can try applying that. It's very interesting. Now, there's another thing, which I find extremely interesting. Some devotees tell me, maybe this is you also, that I cannot forgive so-and-so because of what so-and-so did. It was too bad to forgive. There's no place in the brain to forgive them. It was so bad, like so inhumane, so unconscionable, whatever, I can never forgive them. But who suffers for that? We do, right? So a self-caring person would not put themselves, by their thinking, by their emotional experience with another person, in a state which causes them to suffer. They would forgive because they know it's the best thing to do for them, because they care about themselves. Does that make sense? Now, if that's not enough, just go on Google and learn about how your emotional experience affects your health. But that would be enough to forgive anybody, even if they killed your mother. Yeah, it's so bad on your health, negative emotional experience. So if you care about your health and you have all these negative relationships, self-care would be, I have to clean up these relationships, so I have to be positive because I'll suffer. Do you know, this is amazing, that if you have a good marriage, your immune system will be stronger than someone in a bad marriage. Yeah. If you have a good marriage, you will live 7 to 14 years longer than if you're in a bad marriage. Did you know that? So one marriage counselor said, if you spend 20 minutes a day trying to improve your relationship, that will give you better health than 20 minutes a day in the gym. Wow. That's crazy. Because of the power of the negative, the positive emotions, positive endorphins and all that, oxytocin and whatever else, and the negative emotions from negative experience and how it affects us. So, just knowing that, just on the physical level, that wouldn't you think if I care about myself, I would care about my relationships? I would care about cleaning up my relationships, and if this person did something so bad, at least I could neutralize it. All right, I don't love him, I just don't want to hate him. And, bless his heart, he is what he is. But I don't want to torment myself. And so you can go down the list and see the ways we torment ourselves. Some of us like to be tormented. It's kind of our nature. So we get online and we find things that will torment us. We get all tormented about it. And we start sharing our torment. Right? We wake up in the morning and go, what bad thing's happening to ISKCON today? I gotta share this with everybody. It's like, so a self-caring person wouldn't do that. They would be upset about what's going on, but they would be able to deal with it in a way that's not, I've been thinking about this problem during my whole job, but they wouldn't do that. And you know how difficult that is? To not think about a problem that's really bothering you? It's very difficult. But a self-caring person is just, I can't do this to myself. This is destroying me. Personally, I feel so unqualified, and I have no hope to love Krishna, and my only hope is that I can chant the holy name purely. Other than that, I don't feel like I have any hope. So when I'm doing japa, I'm thinking, this is so important, I can't let anything disturb that japa, because if it does, I got no hope. This is my only hope. And if I don't do this right, then, I'm just, another Kali Yuga back in the cycle. So, I want to love Krishna. I care enough about myself to want to perfect my life, and therefore it spills over into my japa, because that's the thing that's going to give it to me. So if I care about one thing, it spills into the next, and it makes it so much easier for me just to focus and chant japa. Much easier than it was before, because there's a stronger motive, and the motive is connected. I want to go back to Godhead. Well, do you actually care enough to do those things that will get you back to Godhead? Well, if I care enough about myself, yes, I will do that. And it makes it easier. Does that make sense? Yeah. And there's just, you can start imagining things in your life that would be easier if you cared more. Like sometimes I think Gaur asked me, what about, how do you deal with a person who's criticizing you? Something like that. Some question like that you would ask me. A person who's turning, or maybe you didn't ask, but other people ask, somebody's criticizing you, making up stories. This has happened to me several times. If somebody criticizes you and you actually did the wrong thing, be humble and accept the criticism and say, I deserve it. But when they make up stories that are total fiction, that's difficult. So how do you deal with it? And my realization is, if you care about yourself, you're not going to try to get involved in fighting. It doesn't mean unless you're going to lose all your money because of it, or there's some practical reason, but there's no practical reason. You're not going to get involved because there's no point other than tormenting yourself and just agitating that person and this fight goes on. So oftentimes you'll see many, many advanced devotees, when they're criticized, they never say anything. They don't deal with it because it's going to be such a disturbance and so upsetting. They'll think, this is going to disturb my sadhana, my Krishna consciousness, even though the ego says, get back at them, say something bad about them, tell the world they're lying. And sometimes we have to tell the world we're lying, because we may have a position and people lose faith in our position. We may have to clear that up. But if that's not necessary, then the devotee who is protecting himself just don't say anything, won't deal with it. I don't want to go there, I don't want to deal with it. So that's another way self-care can protect us. Okay, let's read something else Prabhu says. So you voluntarily accept this cycle of birth, and you don't accept Krishna, then who can help you? If If you have decided to cut your own throat, how can I help you? You'll do it. Whenever you get opportunity, you'll cut your throat. How much I can give you protection? So the same point. But I think, we can also turn this around and say, if I don't help myself, who's going to help me? So my guru's going to help me. Yes and no. Because Prabhupada's saying here to his disciples, I can help you. I can give you instruction, but I can't help you. Because you have to follow it. So, sometimes devotees say, be merciful to me, and my response is, be merciful to yourself. You already have a lot of mercy. You wrote 80 volumes of mercy, like how much more do you want? Be merciful to me. When was the last time you read any one of those 80 volumes? Can't remember, Prabhu. All right. So you're asking for mercy. You have so much mercy, take it, give it to yourself. That's what self-caring person does. They take advantage of the mercy. Like we're here, so much association, so many classes. Take advantage, give yourself mercy. Take advantage of the Sangha, all the programs. A lot of us don't live near temples. Here's your chance to have a whole morning program. Take advantage. Right? If you don't take advantage, who's going to give you the mercy? This is going to fly over your head, right? Srila Prabhupada was asked, what is the devotee's greatest enemy? And Prabhupada replied, quote, he himself. Because he's a rascal. He's his greatest enemy. So just get out of this rascaldom and you become your friend. Nobody is enemy. You are yourself your enemy. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, I am myself, my only enemy.
I am myself, my only enemy.
There is no other enemy. There's a movie, and it's about a boxer, and he's trying to redeem his father's reputation. He's his son. His father was killed in a match. And he wants to become a heavyweight champion, but he loses the heavyweight championship. And he wants to have a rematch, but his coach, trainer, says, no, we're not going to do it. And he says, but I want to do it. He said, I'm not going to do it. I'm leaving you, it's over. And he said, don't you think I can defeat him? And the trainer said, that's not the person you need to defeat. And he said, look in the mirror, start boxing with that person, because that's the one you have to defeat. That's your enemy, not that other guy. He's not your enemy. And isn't it true? The enemy, we always think the enemy's out there, but we're the enemy. Like nobody's making us, when we give in to our weakness, nobody's forcing us to do that. So I think this is a very important realization. And self-care helps us turn that enemy into a friend. And the more we can turn the enemy into a friend, the easier it is to be Krishna conscious. Why make it difficult on yourself? There's another thing, which is really interesting. Did you ever do something, and after you did it, you said something like, I hate myself when I do that? Right? Okay. Now, just think what's going on right now. We have a relationship with ourselves, and now it's adversity. I hate the person I am. I hate the person I'm becoming. Right? It's interesting. It's not really healthy to hate yourself. But every time we do something that we told ourselves I shouldn't do, but we know is wrong, we end up losing we end up hating ourselves.
Blackout.
Now, here's a problem. When you make a promise to yourself and you don't do it, what happens?
Self-esteem goes down.
Self-esteem goes down. You stop believing yourself. Isn't it interesting? Like the same problem that would happen with another person happens to yourself. Like if Gora tells me he's going to do something, he doesn't do it, I lose trust. If I tell myself I'm going to do something, I stop trusting myself. You ever had that? You don't even, I'm not even going to try to do this because I can't even trust myself.
Lose confidence.
Lose self-confidence, self-esteem, everything. So that will knock your self-esteem down. If I, through self-care, can get to a point where I care enough to do what I am committed to, what I tell myself I'm committed to do, it builds self-trust. Every time, this is going to depress you or excite you depending on what side of the coin you live on. But every time you tell yourself, I'm going to do this, and you don't, it becomes harder to do it the next time. Every time you tell yourself, I'm going to do it, and you do it, it becomes easier the next time. Just think about that. Because we can create habits where we get used to committing and following through, and we can create habits where we commit and don't follow through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every time you do it, you get better at it. For example, some of us have difficulties with controlling anger. And so every time we give into our anger, what happens? We become better at giving into our anger, right? And if we give into it enough, we become really good at being angry. It's like anything can make us angry because we have so much practice. And Maharaj is going to talk about tolerance. So if I'm intolerant, I have lots of practice of being intolerant. I really get good at it. Vice versa. If I control it, I get good at it. Right? It's really, really, I think this is a super powerful principle to meditate. Like every time we do the right thing, it becomes easier to do the right thing the next time. Turn to the person next to you and tell them, every time I do the right thing, it becomes easier to do the right thing. And every time I do the wrong thing, it becomes easier to do the wrong thing.
Okay, let me have it. Every time I do the right thing, it becomes easier to do the right thing. Every time I do the wrong thing, it becomes easier to do the right thing. You get it?
Every time I do the wrong
I told him to call a nail. They're outside doing something.
Yeah. Here's the good news. I'm going to do a little drama here. Japa drama. I was thinking this morning of doing a video. Because I can tell by my mood when I chant, I can tell that it externalizes a lot. So if I'm in a good japa mood where I'm praying, it looks something like this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. And so when I start to space, it starts to, you can just tell physically, Hare Krishna, Hare. It goes to this. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. This is okay, it's not bad. But in its word state, it's just Hare Krishna. Ever been there, done that?
Never did.
So, this is something that horrifically evident from teaching japa that this is really, really important and powerful. It can be just as easy to chant excellent rounds as it is to chant poorly. It's all in the practice that we do every day, because whatever we do every day starts to become the way we do it every day, because we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And you can see that in some devotees. They consistently chant good rounds. It's just how they do it. You see them in Mayapur, and somehow or other, for 2 hours, they're just sitting there like there's nothing else in the universe. You see nothing? It's like they don't even move, nothing. They've trained themselves to do that. And you see other devotees, the whole time they can't focus. It's just sit up, stand down, walk around, go up, go up. Bad rounds outside, bad rounds inside. Bad rounds standing up, bad rounds sitting down. They're not practiced. You ever had that experience? Rounds aren't good inside, you go outside. Rounds are bad outside, you go inside, you sit down, they're bad, stand up, walk around. So a lot of that is the practice. And so it's such a beautiful idea that if I practice acting a certain way long enough, it's just naturally going to be that way. It's going to be easy. I don't have to struggle with it anymore. But if I don't, I'm always struggling with it. Right? Whether it's japa, or anger, or tolerance, or just being empathetic, or kind, or whatever it is, no matter how difficult it is to practice it, by practicing it, we eventually become that. And that's why we have the saying, fake it until you make it. Because the action changes how we think and how we feel and how we believe. And I had a realization, and this is interesting, there's a word for it, and I forget the word, but it's like, you know when you go to the temple and you smell the incense, you're like, that's the incense. The first day I went to the temple, they had that same incense. It's a connection, right? And all the emotion of being at the temple the first time in your life is triggered by that smell of incense. Does anyone know the name of it? Psychological term. But it's, we all have that experience. Oh, you hear that old song?
Déjà vu. Déjà vu.
Maybe. There's a psychological word for it, but it's like you hear an old song when you're in high school. And then it's like all of a sudden you're back in high school, your old friends, everything. It's like
Nostalgia?
no, there's a psychological term. No. Anyway, it's like a udipam. Udipam would be it's an event that stimulates an emotion, or a sound, or a smell, or a song, something that stimulates a particular emotion. So, trigger, so. This is what's actually happening to all of us every morning, and tomorrow morning, or later today when you chant, you can see if this is true. When you touch your beads, it triggers an emotional reaction, which is based on your general experience with japa. So if your experience is good and you like chanting, just that first thing, when you touch that bead, it triggers a positive experience. It's like you'll get energy. If your experience is bad, maybe you don't realize this, but when you touch it, your energy level will go down. If we had you monitored, we could see it going down or going up. For example, this is maybe a more clear example. The wife says to the husband, "Honey, we have to talk." Where does his energy level go? Immediately, I have to go to the bathroom right now. I'm really busy. Can we talk like in 12 years? Like when, some devotees, if you say, time to go on Sankirtan, you start yawning, literally. When I used to do the pick, which which I hated, if someone said the word Sankirtan, I would go within 3 seconds. Seriously. So we have these connections based on experience. So if you and your wife have these amazing discussions and they're really productive and you go very deep and you get closer, then when your wife says, honey, it's time to talk, you're like, yeah, let's talk. That's like, better than eating pizza. This is like, I'd love to do this. This is so good for our relationship. Isn't it? I don't know if any of the guys have that. We won't ask them because their wives are good. Their only answer you can give is yes. But you know what I'm saying, right? Your past experience triggers your emotional state when that thing is coming up. So, believe it or not, when you put your hand in your beanbag, it triggers an experience which is basically your emotional experience that you have when you chant japa all the time. So wouldn't it be nice to work on japa to the point where it's so good that when you put your hand in your beanbag, it's like, wow, this is ecstatic, I love it, it's positive, right? So we can do that, and we can do that with anything. We can train ourselves with anything. Or we can stay in our conditioned state and then we struggle. So self-care can be extremely powerful. So just meditate on this. I got a realization, I don't know, when you're online and videos come up. So this video came up with Mike Tyson, the fighter, after he retired. And the host was saying, when you go to Mike Tyson's called Iron Mike Tyson, he was like a tank, just like run people over. They say, when you're in the ring, it's like you become this different person. You walk in the ring and when you start fighting, you become like, I don't know what he said. It's kind of like a monster. In a good sense, monster, like a monster boxer. And Mike Tyson said, it completely stuns me, he said, I hate that person. He said, I am not like that person. Because sometimes you'll see him, if he's been seen to knock someone out and run over to make sure the person's okay after he annihilated all this anger, and then he knocks him out and he runs over to pick him up and see if he's okay. So he said, I hate that person. And then when I heard that, I was like, oh my God. How many things do we do and we hate ourselves? Say, I hate myself when I'm that person. Like, what a position to be in. And I started thinking, okay, if I actually care about myself, I would never do anything that would cause me to hate myself. Because what worse position could it be to end up hating yourself?
Yeah.
Right? So, if you start couching things in a self-caring mode, you can see how much this can help you. From preventing you from doing that. Why did I do that? I promised myself I would never do that. Because you're right there, like, I care too much about myself because I know if I do this, it's going to feel good now, but an hour from now, I'm going to be crying on my pillow, beating myself up. Yes? So, that's important. So I have an affirmation. And then, I think we have maybe till 12:30, and then we can do a little exercise. So this is the affirmation. I'll just read it to you. I trust and respect myself by living in integrity with my values, and thus act as my best friend. So I'll say it bit by bit. You can repeat it. Try to say it like you want to imbibe this in your life. I trust and respect myself by living in integrity with my values. And thus act as my best friend. We're writing a book called Self-Care Affirmations. So this will be in it. And on the recording, all the affirmations are on the blue stick. Let's say it again. It's powerful. I trust and respect myself. By living in integrity with my values. And thus act as my best friend. Wouldn't that be beautiful if we living in integrity with my values. That means my actions are aligned with my values and beliefs. I don't act against my beliefs. Every time we act against our values, we suffer. Yes? And it's a very high level of suffering, isn't it? I think it's one of the highest levels of emotional pain is to do something that you know is wrong and not restrain yourself. A self-caring person could not do that to themselves. Isn't that beautiful? A self-caring person would not allow them to do something which goes against what they value. And living in integrity with your values is the highest happiness, at least from a material perspective, not ananda, but from a material psychological perspective, it's the highest happiness. Because you always are the person you want to be. You're never somebody else. What could be better than that, right? So you want to do an exercise?
Yes.
All right. There's about 4 people want to do the exercise. You want to do the exercise? You need a partner, so it's 2. So if you could just find a partner up with somebody.
Oh, listen.
This is you're just going to talk to one another.
Or should I go on Monday?
We want to do it in 2s, not 3s, because 3 you don't all get to talk. It's a reflection, just an exercise to share and reflect with your partner. What are things you do, feel, think that are harmful for yourself, that you really need to stop doing, and how could self-care, more self-care, help you?
True confession.
So you can think, yeah, I do this thing, I shouldn't be doing whatever it is. I have this attachment, I should just give it up. I'm thinking about these things that are unhelping. What are they, and how can more self-care help? And some of you are saying, do we have 6 hours for this? So pick 1 or 2 of the big ones. 1, 2, 3 of the big ones. And just talk about it. Okay?
That's it? That's all she wrote.
One time I went to it, natural relationship.
What are you doing to love yourself and to stop
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes I just
I don't care.
sometimes
Like Prabhu said that.
sometimes I just
But it's like
touch
how
it.
it's like how
It's like your intelligence is telling you to do it, but then you're still
and when
I'm right. in the moment, it's like instant.
For me, it's really important, but sometimes
That's like
you can say no, it's so I know that